Yes.
Okay, great. Well, hi, everyone. My name is Gloria Blaise. I am a fourth year MS PhD student at Cornell University. And I was born in Haiti, in Kafou specifically. Boucher was where I grew up for a bit. I came to the States when I was 5 in 2000. You can guess my age now. And I've since been here in New York. And I have the opportunity to share my research today with you all, which is titled here, Rural Network Ties, Mapping the Spread of Community-Based Agroforestry in the Latibonite region of Haiti. This is a part of my master's program that I completed last year. And I'm looking forward to sharing this with you all today. Below are the actual collaborators and funders of this project, and the names below mine are members of my committee. And so, yeah, if anyone here is familiar with the country of Haiti, then it's likely that you have come across some type of headline referring to the state of the country's natural resources, specifically its trees and forests. And so as you come across these headlines, I want you all to consider the term tree cover and forest cover, because they are different. Forest cover refers to the actual patches of forest that are greater in whatever area and density, whereas trees outside of forest are considered tree cover. And there's a specific definition for that. But I just want you all to consider those terms, as they tend to be used interchangeably, which is incorrect. The country in terms of tree cover has about 30% in tree cover, and 2%, the 2% number comes from the virgin forests that are no longer around. But despite that, one second, let me put these blinds down. Sorry, excuse my home office outfit. But despite that, right? If you have been to Haiti, you have seen any great images, hopefully in the media, I just want to plug it in here that despite the country being labeled poor by whoever's definition, the country is full of rich history, resources, a great culture, and great people. But jumping right into the study area, this is what a typical hillside in the study area that I studied in looks like. As you can see, it's really bare, right? Bare and in critical need of restoration. And so agroforestry, which is the intentional combination or integration of trees into agricultural systems, is not new to Haiti. Haitians practice some form of it in the Jardin Lakou all across the country. But in terms of actual programs and projects that have been implemented in the country, several agencies and ONGs, NGOs have been implementing this practice throughout the country for decades. And this table here just shows a list of the more common ones that folks are aware of. And the asterisk is one that I'm going to be focus on in this particular presentation. And to the right are just some images, some articles about programs in Haiti. And so the Haiti Timber Reintroduction Program, this is going to be the program of focus for this presentation. It's a community-based educational agroforestry program implemented by an NGO operating in the Veretz area of Latibonite. The actual organization, Haiti Friends, is based in Pittsburgh, but they've started off as a partner organization of the hospital before branching out on their own. And so this program has been established since 2005. It began implementation in 2006. And the program pretty much seeks to try to implement a proactive approach to addressing human well-being, but also natural resource degradation or land degradation in this area of Latibonite. And since their inception, they've worked with over 10,000 community members in over 70 plus communities. And so the hospital that they do partner with is Hospital Albert Schweitzer. I'm sure if you've been in that area, you've heard of that hospital before. I think they're private, but they've been running for over 65 years. And so just keep that in mind for this presentation. And so jumping into the actual research, this is a framework that I use to conduct the overall master's, but the eco-agriculture framework, which has been developed by numerous partners, especially one of my committee members now. And the overall idea of the framework is to improve rural human livelihoods. And we explore the specific outcomes of this framework by using the H-trip intervention and as it related to agroforestry. And specifically, we looked at land cover and livelihood outcomes. And so why I chose this particular framework, and the part of the framework that I specifically focused on, was using local level evaluations as a means to better manage or better inform landscape level management practices. And so this particular study looks at the community level outcomes. And in addition to that framework, a part of that framework tries to develop indicators or provide indicators for livelihood. While we use the livelihood capitals, which is a community capitals framework, while it's not explicitly addressed or mentioned in this framework, it is very related to the sustainable livelihoods framework, which also uses capitals as a means to indicate or measure livelihood in communities. And what I mean by capitals or livelihood capitals, these are the stocks of resources that are available for communities to utilize to actually build their livelihoods. So in the case of social capital, we look at relations of trust and reciprocity between people. Natural capital includes all of the natural resources, sites, which include rivers, forests, state parks, if there are any where these folks are. And also human capital includes the skills and capabilities that allow them to make a living and strengthen their communities. And there are 3 research questions, but 2 major research questions that I'm going to discuss here for this presentation. And that is, what role do social networks play in driving agroforestry adoption? And below that, what livelihood benefits influence the spread of adoption? And secondly, what are the trends and patterns of changes in tree cover and agroforestry practicing communities? To your right, what you see is the actual study area. So we have the map of Haiti. We circle around the actual 3, 4, 5 communes that we use for the actual study. And the red dots indicate communities that are not in the program, and the green indicate the communities that are in the program. Well, I must note there are, of course, limitations to doing a sampling strategy like this that chooses enrollment and non-enrollment as a means to compare. But this study did not try to establish causality, but more so trying to find associations between communities practicing at XYZ level of agroforestry implementation with assistance from an NGO that has inputs that other communities that are probably practicing agroforestry, but not at the scale of what an NGO can help them do or enhance capabilities to do so. And we use the H-strip as a case study for community-based agroforestry. And here are the methods. It was a pretty mixed method study. And so for the first questions, or the first set of questions, we used 12 communities and a mixture of social network analysis and semi-structured interviews made up the bulk of the data. And then we also had focus groups within certain communities that we chose based on their experience with the program, how long they've been practicing it, but also with the communities that had never been involved in the program. And as for the tree cover change / land cover change, we had a sample of 60 communities, 30 of them from H-strip, 30 from non-H-strip communities. And we just looked at percent tree cover and changes in loss and gain of tree cover data. And this was mostly conducted with Google Earth Pro and QGIS. And jumping right into the results, right? One of the questions asks, what role do social networks play in agroforestry adoption? And within the entire study area, we found that there were various recruiting methods that the NGO used, and the diverse set of networks, which included the hospital and the hospital's sister clinics or mobile clinics that were present in the area. And of course, the NGO themselves proactively looked for communities in the area that they would actually go out right around the communes and find people, enter communities, speak to the leaders to try to spread awareness of the potential program that could fit the community's needs. And the figure on the right illustrates the ways that some of the communities were recruited. And there are different colors here. And so there were instances of communities being referred by nearby and even far communities. And keep that in mind that the topography in this area is very hilly. So for a community to be, let's say, 10 kilometers away and, however distance that is, I'm not sure what the actual distance of that is, but just keep in mind that hillsides are hard to go up and down. Those take time and effort. And so to see a community that's not near another community adopt by way of that other community is quite interesting to see. And focusing more on the figure, there are 3 colors, and you see the hospitals at the center, and the actual office for the NGO is located in the hospital's campus. And so what you see is the red lines indicate the communities where the hospital already had presence in terms of community development for water efforts, or other mobile clinics where they had presence in. So the NGO leveraged that network to gain access to those communities. The green ones indicate where the actual NGO went in themselves and spoke to the leaders and recruited people. And then the cyan represent the connections or referrals that were made by participants in communities that then shared with another one. And these are just confirmed ones. I did not get a chance to interview every single community to see how they were referred, but it's very likely that a number of other communities were recruited by way of other communities involved. And the table to the left just shows the recruitment methods that the interviewees mentioned. And so as you see here, the community leader is the champion of adoption here. That's the person that's driving adoption within the communities. That's who most people trust within their community. So definitely keep that in mind as far as the outcomes of this study. And just so there's a quote below here, the leader is the one that got me involved. Whatever he says is good, I will get involved without a doubt. Just that's what I mean by the community leaders being champions. And further looking at networks, we conducted a social network analysis where pretty much based on distance and the number of connections that we identified through the participants, we ran 2 different analyses that tried to look at what communities are most influential and what communities have like the most influence. And so each red dot here indicates a physical location of a community in the outline area of the map above. And each arrow represents a connection between communities. The thicker the arrow, the thicker the line is, the more connections we identify through the participants. And table 3 here shows the summary of the social network analysis of the total number of ties, percent degree centrality, and percent information centrality. So degree centrality measured actor activity. In this case, the more connections we identified in a community that it had with other communities, the more active it was in the network. And among the sample communities, there were a couple that were central to the network. And information centrality predicted how information might flow through different paths, or in essence, connections between the community members. And this was based on a number of ties, their strength, and their distance. So what we found was the longer standing communities that were clustered near other communities, of course, played a very important role in the spread, and that there were certain communities that were very influential. And of course, this was also the long-standing communities that had been there from the very beginning, that had a chance to be in the program every year. If I didn't mention earlier, but the way the program works is every year within the same communities, they have a new cohort of participants that they spend 9 months learning the agroforestry system, how to enhance what they already are doing or build on what Haitians already know how to do pretty well, right? And so we can imagine that communities that have been involved for a long time have a greater network of people that they know, but also more influence on the actual network of program participants in program communities. And this quote here just pretty much illustrates what I mean by that. And so one community leader says, before you would have people in different communes not know about each other. But now through this network that H-Trip helped them establish, through the leaders that they help train and build capacity to lead, hundreds of people are now connected. Everyone is helping each other do research, and they're also sharing seeds. So that's also increasing biodiversity in communities that don't have access to certain seeds to plant certain trees. And I assume that's also the case for certain crops, right? And so moving on to the livelihood benefits. So, right, we now know that this program is spreading, people are making recommendations, referrals, but what's actually happening on ground, right? So one of the things that we looked at was first of all, what's driving people's adoption behavior? And what we found were 3 of the main ones was access to trees, obvious, right? We want trees, Haitians love trees. We use that to, build our livelihoods. And ecosystem services, which include stabilizing the soil, providing shade. We know how important shade is in places like Haiti. You will stand under a tree while waiting for something or just having a chat with your friend. You need to be under a tree for the most part, if you're in a rural area at least. I guess in urban areas, probably under a balcony somewhere. But also increasing food sources. Food security is a problem in Haiti. And that's another dimension that I'm exploring now further on in my PhD research. But these were the 3 main drivers of adoption. And this is because those members or those early adopters were able to demonstrate or be like the guinea pigs of the program. And once people saw that happening, these drivers became even more important further along. And below is just a quote about how someone used the trees or was aware of how the trees helped with their soil erosion or reduce soil erosion. and just indicating that the ecosystem services to him or to her was the most important reason why they wanted to stay in the program, adopt the practice at the capacity that ACE-TRIP was teaching. And I just want to indicate here, this is not, this table here presents a summary of the capitals. So with the mixed methods, you apply codes and then you apply a weight, and that it gives you a way to pretty much have an overview of the patterns and trends in people's opinions and statements. And so throughout the interviews, we coded each statement for specific capitals. And so what this table shows here is the average weights of each capital. What I did here was I compared 2 communities with 2 other communities. So a total of 4 communities were used for this. This is not the sampling that I showed earlier, but I just want to focus on this particular one because this table is a part of a manuscript that has been accepted and is currently in press at the moment. But it does it does show that there are certain capitals that this practice, once established in a community over time, does help to build. So when compared with communities that we match by broad characteristics, again, we're not trying to establish causality here, but when we compare the communities, we saw differences in certain capitals, especially social, human, and cultural, and also financial. So just keep that in mind. And we hope to further make this study more robust and more rigorous in hopes of trying to establish these associations between this practice and, of course, the social dimensions of communities doing it together. And again, these are just some quotes here from the participants. So I'll give a brief moment for you all to read through them. But these additional statements just describe how having a greater presence of trees helped them address immediate needs. Immediate needs means sending their kids to school, going to the market, getting food. Let's say you don't have enough of a food group on your land from your crops. You could, sell something, whether it be some charcoal that you know how to produce better now because the organization taught you how to prune and use those, but also not go for the roots, the trunks of the tree. So you're able to now go down to the market and get something that you probably don't have access to, right? And also health needs. Someone specifically said that the tree stand that he grew with ACE-TRIP assistance is what helped him go to the hospital and be able to afford treatment. And just the idea that people are now able to better manage their trees without completely depleting their resources there. And looking at tree cover now, this was the last component. We tried to see, okay, well, we know what's going on with livelihood, but what's another dimension of livelihood, which is your environment around you. So how it has tree cover, which is, one of the objectives was to increase tree cover as a means to enhance livelihood, because trees are livelihood in Haiti. And so what we attempted to do here was to analyze satellite imagery of 60 communities to gain a better understanding of the changes in land cover. And we used communities with at least 10 years experience practicing agroforestry, since trees do take a while to reach maturity, depending on the species. And so what we did were we used 3 time periods as an indicator of time over time. And so we used grid cell overlays to rate each cell. To the right, you see the actual example of a cell and what tree cover might look like, whether it's bare or dense. So as you can see here, we have a rating criteria. And below that is you see a table of the actual values. And so the 2 sets of communities, the 2 groups, were initially, of course, they started off different in some way. But over time, as you can see, the comparison, we see that there has been an increase in that difference. So in 2002, they were dissimilar in ways, but average percent by 2020 was 48% more in agroforestry communities and non-agroforestry communities. And another way to also track these patterns and trends was to use secondary data from the global GLAD lab, Global Land Analysis Discovery Lab. I think that's the name of the actual acronym. But what we did was we used their data to count how many pixels of trees were gained or lost within these communities. And by their means, tree cover meant actual tree stand that was at least 5 meters or taller. And so this data set indicated where losses happen and where gains happen. What we did was in QGIS, we ran a function or analysis that counted how many cells, and the output looked like what's on the right there. So it pretty much counts each cell within each community. And then we use Excel to compare the actual numbers. And using a Mann-Whitney U test, what we found was there were differences in gains, not so much losses. So what we see here are the left side is the adopting communities and the right side are non-adopting. And what you see is there are more gains in the adopting communities, which is the first line. And below, we see more losses in the non-adopting community. Now, of course, the only significant one here would probably be the gains, but this just shows the patterns. Like it seems as if tree cover is of course being diminished because trees are a livelihood. People are going to continue to harvest them to meet their livelihood needs. But it seems as if with the introduction of a program like this, gains are more likely, but also people are perhaps better managing their resources. But these communities, the comparison communities were chosen at random. I didn't actually visit them, so there's no way to verify. There are, of course, things that might confound this, that being there might be an actual program there, or people there are just not as trusting. So there are a number of variables that could have impacted these results, but this is just to provide a higher level view of like what could potentially happen in communities that are involved. And so moving on to the conclusions. So what I find is networks play an important role in diffusion and spread of an intervention. I think earlier, Karen mentioned trust in networks. It's critical, especially in the absence of a government that's actually functioning, right? And folks are used to a number of NGOs. There are literally a ton of NGOs in Haiti. So just having that it has trust already in it and leverage that clearly plays a role in that. And of course, the networks of the rural paysans, they somehow, regardless of topography, have these connections. And there were some positive effects on tree cover. And while both groups experienced more losses than gains, in adopting communities, they were able to better manage their resources, as I mentioned earlier, without completely depleting them. And so as for recommendations, as I just mentioned, leverage those networks that already have some trust built into them. I think the special case here with this program is it's a hospital. We know how critical the hospitals are in Haiti, especially since access to health is so limited for a number of people. And so that hospital was trusted. They provided a service in the region. It made it easy for this organization to get in communities and establish trust and build that trust through their own program. And we know people that are experiencing poverty are going to share opportunities with each other that help them escape poverty. For as long as the program is contextually relevant and actually is designed to be context specific, I think people will always try to spread intervention. And the way diffusion works is initially you'll have some people that are reluctant or people that are very excited, and you'll see in the beginning it might be slow, but then it hops up. The diffusion is really, really quick, and then it just stagnates. And when it stagnates, you just assume that perhaps the members themselves would just spread it amongst themselves. And building social capital should be a priority, especially as mentioned earlier, in the absence of a functioning government. Getting people to trust each other, really try to approach their problems at a community level is one way to try to develop Haiti. I mean, very broad statement here, but community level efforts seem to be very successful. And those could be scaled up with the right funding and policy environment once things actually get better in terms of policy and stuff in Haiti. And so maintaining presence in communities as a program, definitely maintaining presence every year keeps enhances the likelihood of sustainability. I think that's a really critical component of this program. And to close off next steps, we have secured a pretty good grant to carry out research for the next 3 or so years. And so the idea here is to build a model for a planetary health community-centered model for agroforestry prioritization or implementation across the rural landscape. And so if you do want additional details on the livelihood outcomes of this study, the paper will be published soon. But other than that, thank you. I hope I didn't speak too fast. I'm just trying to respect the time. Thank you.